Welcome Internet, the psychoanalytic talk, and today we're going to be talking about the concept of trisexual and tricexualism developed by Christopher Bollas in his article called The Trisexual. So before we begin this expose, I need to make things very clear that Christopher Bollas is not going to talk about necessarily a new option in sexuality, something completely brand new, let's say per object choice, i.e. the sexual orientation. He's more going to talk about a certain type of person and a certain type of phenomenology and interactions that he himself describes as rare, but still he had the case of Sandor, which he exposed in his article, which led him to theorize about the trisexual. So, without further ado, what is the trisexual? Well, very simply, the trisexual is an individual that is attracted to both genders, male and female, both sexes. But it's not just that, it's not just simple bisexuality. It goes a step beyond, because in the interpersonal exchange that he has with others, the trisexual is able to fascinate and love them, but they never really get attached. Like they're there, they fascinate, they invest the relationship, the person that's receiving the love feels fulfilled, loved, emotionally really given something very deep and profound. So we're not talking about just a one-sided relationship. Both parties enjoy it. But once the relationship ends, the trisexual withdraws from the relationship, leaves the individual. However, and this is very interesting, and one of the main phenomenological interests in this concept is that the trisexual does not leave behind hatred, bitterness, despair. Quite the opposite. When the trisexual leaves the relationship, they are fondly remembered and they are loved and cared for as if they had not left, meaning that they don't, when leaving the relationship, they don't create a lack or a miss, but more of a reminiscence, a happy, like, oh, it wasn't that nice, wasn't that sweet. So it's not about how the trisexual leaving the relationship destroys it. Quite the opposite. It creates a form of reverie and memory in which basically the emotions are not overwhelming, the person does not feel betrayed. It's an ability in which a trisexual does not hurt others. It's just that it is implicit in the relationship that the relationship is not there to last. It's not everlasting. It's just there as a dream, almost, of like a happy moment for both parties. And that's the full force of the trisexual. For Bollas, the trisexual is also an individual which has a wide extent of knowledge, a wide array of ways he can act, present, feel, and so on and so forth. And they navigate sexuality in a very subtle and refined way, understanding the codes, what is demanded from them, what the other party wants, all of that with massive ease. So how is it that the trisexual can do all of this? Well, according to Bollas, it's because the trisexual identifies themselves not as man or woman, not as male or female, but as a body that's non-differentiated, i.e. it's non-gendered body, which is reminiscent of the child's body before the sexual secondary criterias appear, like breasts or, for example, hair and so on and so forth. So it's a time before that to which the individual identifies, where both masculine and feminine are present and both are possible. Therefore, there's never a renouncement, which would be the case in other sexualities, at least according to Bollas. In the trisexual does not renounce, making them completely fluid and able to navigate all of this with extreme ease. And you might be wondering, that's interesting, but it seems a little narcissistic. Well, Bollas pointed out that yes, at least according to him, the trisexual inscribes themselves in something that's narcissistic, but not really. Why is that? Well, basically the narcissistic is self-preoccupied and really is merged with the object, that the narcissist and the object are one. For the trisexual, it's not really like that. There's not that merging, and especially because the trisexual is not preoccupied with themselves, not preoccupied with the image that they give. They just know what they're giving, therefore they can fascinate easily, but they never abuse of that fascination. They're not there to use it. They're there just to enjoy the moment, enjoy the ride, and make the other individual enjoy the ride. Therefore, it's all about a sort of a homeostasis between the trisexual and the others, that in which the individual creates a bond that's both incredibly strong and yet incredibly delicate, that fades away after a certain time. When I mean fades away, it's the real bond, but they can rekindle it and they can relieve it, and without creating any form of complicated interactions or any form of hatred on the behalf of the person which they've seduced. Quite the opposite. So, whereas a narcissist does not know how to break the relationship, first and foremost because they merge with the object, but even when this separation, this sort of like hurt and destruction that occurs during those moments, which is not the case with the trisexual. In a way, and this is only my association, right? I see the trisexual as the narcissist that has succeeded, that has become the pinnacle, that's so on top that they don't fear that their image will be hurt or harmed, because they know what to give, they know how to give it, and they know how to receive it. Meaning that the dialectic is perfect, because the trisexual can identify with both man and woman. He knows what everyone needs. Therefore, there is no guessing or second guessing. The trisexual is like a very rare patient, as Bollas states, because Bollas says that there's not that many, but when you have them, you kind of have to think about them. And very interestingly enough, he points out that the trisexual, in many cases, is more at ease than the therapist, that they have better qualities than the therapist, and that we should refrain from seeing it just as superficial or fake, that the trisexual is only a facade that hides a deeper, darker core. He says that no, there's not that they are completely capable of adapting, and they do so because they have had enough care and love, and they have identified with something below what we all do. Therefore, the renunciation is not at the same level. Therefore, they've perhaps kept a bit of that all possibilityness that comes in childhood. You know, how every option is available and open for the child. Well, the trisexual in many ways is like that. Everything still remains available. Therefore, there's a form of fantasy that's still very present, and they can like expand it with others. They can create a form of daydream that expands, a reverie that englobes others with themselves. Therefore, no one loses anything. Not more than when, for example, you stop daydreaming. It's okay, it was there, it was fun, but there's nothing wrong with it not being there anymore. Therefore, there's no problem, there's no foul play. And I think that that's the big important point. The trisexual is capable of basically navigating the relationship and the relationship world with ease and perfection even, whereas most of us can't do that. So it's a very interesting concept. And it also enlightens the fact that we don't always have patients that suffer immensely. Sometimes we have patients that navigate well and just want to know themselves even better. And in this case, the trisexual is a good example of that, of a patient that's not suffering, but that navigates it well, and who's been able to use their narcissism in an extremely positive way in order both to fulfill their needs, but the needs of others, and to understand and know what the other person wants. And that's a very important point. And so basically, it's a very interesting concept. A little caveat, though, is that I don't think there's that many of them, as he points out. And secondly, I don't know if these individuals would be that interested in psychotherapy. Of course, knowing about them, and if they're very educated, very brilliant, they might just enjoy the fact of like sharing their experiences and basically be happy to be in psychoanalysis. But I don't think it's that common. but at least the idea themselves are interesting, because it's not because something is uncommon that it doesn't exist. And quite the opposite, it's because it's uncommon that we should shed more light on it, and that's what I'm trying to do with this video. So basically, that's what it is. So fundamentally, this is going to be pretty much it for the video. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. If you want to ask any questions, feel free to do so, and I'll see you in the next one.